My entitled sister is toxic beyond measure, constantly screaming and giving an attitude to me and her parents, while also directing this energy at pretty much anybody who gets in her way. And despite the fact that I've told my parents about this constantly, they refuse to do anything and even go as far as blaming me for her bad attitude. And I'm honestly so sick of it, and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. My sister, who's 15 years old, has always been selfish. Ever since she was a kid, she would never share. She would never do anything for anyone else, but would expect everyone to do everything for her. Obviously, as a small child, that is understandable, but she's never grown out of it. And my parents have always dismissed this as just her personality. My sister has always been rude to me specifically, and she demands that I do things for her. She demands I make her food, and demands that I pay for her things, and that I do this or that or anything else. But if I ask the same, she just shouts at me. I don't remember the last time she's done anything for anyone out of the kindness of her own heart. She just shouts. There's been times I've been violently ill and bedridden due to a chronic illness, and I asked her if she could get me some water, and she shouted at me, even though I make her food and drink multiple times a day, because if I don't, she just won't eat. She's also rude about everything. Anytime someone talks to her, she has a tone in her voice or she shouts. She is so difficult to have any kind of conversation with. If I say nice things, she's rude to me, and then she screams, and it's just awful. And my parents say nothing, but if I dare talk half as bad as she does, I get told off. I've mentioned countless times the favoritism and how they see her as a perfect little angel, and they coddle her and rarely tell her off, and has never given her any discipline, yet they have always done that to me, and they've acted like I was the crazy one. She's also incredibly manipulative. She always plays the victim and turns my parents against me when she is in the wrong. I told my parents that one day, people are going to have enough of her in the real world, and I'm going to have to cut contact if her behavior continues. And again, they just won't listen to me, and instead thought that it was just sisterly love, and that this is normal sister behavior and not concerning behavior. But thankfully, all of that changed this week, where we went to a family reunion, and my cousins humbled her. She was doing her normal toxic behavior. She was talking to them rudely and rolling her eyes at them, which is something she does to pretty much everybody. And my 23-year-old cousin wasn't having it. He said to her, "Listen, if you keep acting like this in the real world, you are going to get slapped in the face," while also saying that she needs to cut her attitude. And my sister just rudely said, "Yeah, sure, okay," as if he was stupid or something like that. And my 12-year-old cousin added that he always feels like she judges him because she always just glares at him. Now, obviously, my parents couldn't deny this, and it was actually a really big wake-up call. They realized her behavior isn't just to immediate family, and it isn't normal to outsiders. And she would do this same behavior to people that she isn't even as close to, and not just to her parents and sister. So now my parents are telling me that I can't get her food and water, and she needs to do some things for herself, and they are forcing her to be independent. And they've even been talking about disciplining her when she is toxic. And trust me, she is not taking it well. She's been screaming at me even though it's not my fault, and I haven't done anything wrong. It's a bit late, but I'm glad they are finally putting their foot down, and no longer looking at her as this perfect little angel who can do no wrong. But regardless, I seriously hope they stick with it, because her behavior is absolutely awful. Yeah, your sister sounds incredibly spoiled, and this really sucks because it seems like this is your parents' fault. Don't get me wrong, your sister does have a bad attitude, and that is her problem, but the parents have basically said, "Oh, this is fine, don't worry about it." They've played favoritism, and they've basically allowed this to happen across the board. And you know it's real and it's bad when someone else who isn't around you all the time blatantly says, "Hey, you've got to stop that attitude. Like, this is not okay, and seriously, it is not something that's going to work in the real world." So you know what? Despite the fact that they were neglectful in the beginning, it sounds like your parents are coming around and figuring out your sister's attitude, because the way she's been acting is completely inappropriate. And hopefully with time, all of this can finally get switched around. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled friend sends me over 69 messages after I tell her I'm taking a day off from trying to teach her English. But now I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, I need to start off by saying that I'm a people pleaser and a doormat, so be aware that I'm not innocent in any of this, and I am responsible for letting the situation progress and worsen without firmly shutting it down sooner. Believe me, I know it is also my fault. Now, I speak English fluently. I'm not perfect by any means, but my level is C2, so I am definitely proficient. My friend doesn't speak English very well, but I love helping people, and so I offered her free lessons to improve her speaking skills. She was supposed to study on her own, and I gave her a list of links that provide easy and clear grammar rules on all of the necessary topics to reach a B2 level. Well, she lost said list a number of times, she didn't study, and she stopped following lessons with me due to her depression. Now, I don't blame her because I have my own issues, but now August is coming to an end, and she is anxious because she needs her English to improve in order to find a job. She wants me to give her 2-hour lessons every day after work, and despite the fact that I work full-time, I consented, which honestly was my first mistake. Fast forward and we get to Saturday, and I told her last week and then reminded her on Friday that yesterday would have been my day off and that I would have gone out to do my own thing. She was also allowed to send me messages, which is my second mistake, and I figured that I would reply whenever I had the time. Now, take a guess. How many messages do you think I got? Literally, I got 69 messages. I counted them. It was insane. She would ask me silly questions that I have either already replied to a bunch of times or that are easily answered by a search on Google. We were supposed to do a 4-hour lesson today, but frankly, I am so pissed off that I haven't even replied yet. I can tell from her tone in the messages that she is annoyed and mad. She wrote 3 or 4 times by saying, "Okay, so when you reply, we'll figure this out," which to me reads like she just wants me to reply back faster. Like, who in their right mind sends 69 text messages to someone who clearly and explicitly said that this is my day off and I will be out and about? I'm honestly so frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, this doesn't sound like a friend, but instead it sounds like someone who's very lazy, who's basically trying to place like all responsibility on learning English on your shoulders and yours alone. You've given her resources so she can learn English. You've done everything you can and you've given way more time than anyone would reasonably give. So in my opinion, especially after receiving 69 text messages, I would tell her, "I'm sorry, but this is not working out," because this right here is insane behavior. And I really think you would be better off shutting this all down now instead of dragging this out and trying to people please her any longer. An entitled manager at HR and payroll demands that we automate all of her decisions so that just about anybody from her department can have access to anything that HR and payroll would normally have. And even though we told her that this was not a good idea, she demanded that we did it, resulting in one of the greatest forms of karma I've ever seen in my life. Here's what happened. In my first job, I worked in IT as an access and permissions administrator at a large company with a significant technological debt. The environment included custom software dating back to Windows 9 and even the DOS era. Initially, the work was quite tedious, involving a lot of back and forth communication between multiple departments, and we had to ensure that each employee had the necessary training and documentation to access data in the scope requested by their manager. Additionally, we needed approval from the manager of the department related to the system role in question. On top of that, the company's excessive paper-only bureaucratic workflow made this work go at a snail's pace. I mean, a single SAP account for a blue-collar worker required at least 3 forms signed by different people. The heads of departments responsible for signing those papers didn't feel any urgency to send them to us quickly. A good example of this is when I myself waited over 2 weeks after being hired in the IT department before my first account was ever set up. Until then, I only had a guest account that allowed me to access the main internal website with the company's procedures, regulations, and other basic information. Up to this point, each signed form had to be physically delivered to us, which was agonizingly slow given that the company had multiple branches. So we decided to automate away the paperwork. Our first step was to allow the use of scanned documents. It was a partial success because while it did eliminate courier delays, management still required us to sign the physical copies afterwards, which we mass stamped at the end of each month. The next step was to introduce a fully electronic workflow. We faced significant resistance from upper management, so we had to settle on a system that mostly replicated the existing paper processes. Despite this, it honestly really was a game changer. We created presets that managers could select and customize as needed, while also using data from these customizations to create better fitting presets. We also developed workflows that automatically generated and assigned subtickets for necessary approvals and tracked how long it took, even sending reminders if needed. And finally, we got an approval from HR to access layoff data to generate a user block or removal tickets. Now, sometime after we rolled out the new system, the HR and payroll manager made a big fuss. She was furious that her team was still waiting weeks to get their permissions and questioned whether our work had been for nothing. Now, with all things considered, that really struck a chord with me. Inside, I was overjoyed, but I did my best to keep a neutral expression. At that time, we were working on summary reports with burn down and bottleneck charts, and I already knew that tickets requesting HR payroll access were spending over most most of their lifespan waiting for her or one of her sub-managers to approve them. Well, the manager immediately went on the defensive, claiming that she couldn't keep up with the amount of tickets. She then requested a change. She wanted any request from her employee to be automatically approved within the relevant scope of their sub-department. For example, a request for an HR worker to have full HR access and limited payroll access would be automatically approved for HR access, but not for payroll and vice versa. Now, I was skeptical, but I wasn't exactly in a position to argue. I asked my boss to join the discussion and explained that the goal was to prevent overly permissive approvals that could lead to unauthorized access. Basically, we wanted to keep people out who didn't belong there. I tried my best to convince her to brainstorm together potential edge cases before making a blanket approval, but she was already set on her decision and wasn't interested in discussing details. So my boss just shrugged and said it would be her responsibility. He told her to write up an official document outlining the change and that he would proceed with the implementation. The only request we had was to include a line that each such request would still be created and assigned to as normal and marked as automatically approved by the HR manager's decision. I then uploaded the scan into our system and, anticipating that it would eventually backfire, made a photocopy to keep handy in the top drawer of my desk, with the original copy going to the archive. Well, a few weeks later, she stormed into our room, and the speed with which she flung open the door made it clear that she was furious. She demanded to know why we had granted full access to payroll data to her subordinate. Now, I think it was the only time I ever heard anyone yell in that company, so I calmly reminded her that she requested to automatically approve in-department access requests. Well, she wasn't having it, explaining that one of her low-ranking subordinates from the payroll sub-department had access to the salaries of everyone in their department, including their managers, and was unhappy with the paycheck disparity. She then said to me, "Isn't that obvious that they shouldn't be able to do that?" I responded by saying, "Well, yeah, to a human, but that decision was automated away by your request." I then handed her a copy of the document that she had signed, which instructed us to automatically approve any and all such tickets without any exception. Well, immediately afterwards, she asked us to roll back the change while she wrote up another document to cancel the previous one. In the following days, she meticulously reviewed all of those tickets and requested us to reduce access for several users. Now, I have to admit, she did a thorough job and kept up a good pace in reviewing new requests, and was doing it daily instead of once every week or 2 weeks as before. In the end, we managed to distill a subset of permissions that could be approved automatically and proceeded to implement a similar approach with other departments. Because trust me, I'm sure this manager absolutely learned her lesson. Yeah, this is one of those situations where the manager was way too lazy to do her own job, so she wanted to automate it in some kind of way, and that backfired in a spectacular fashion. Like, here you are, the IT professional, trying to be like, wait a second, this is not a good idea, and she's like, no, this is what I want to do. So getting her to sign off on all of that, and then keeping a copy on hand because you knew this was all going to go down, in my opinion, is super hilarious and absolutely deserved, because if she had just done her job, all of this could have been avoided. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for leaving my fiancé after receiving pictures of him cheating on me at his bachelor party? Here's what happened. Okay, so for a bit of background, I was planning my wedding with my 30-year-old fiancé, who we will call Jake for the sake of the story. We've been together for 4 years, and honestly, I thought that we had a great relationship. His bachelor party was last weekend, and it was something that we had both discussed and agreed upon. He was going to Vegas with his friends for a few days, and I was totally on board with it. Fast forward to Saturday night, and I was at home binge watching my favorite show when I received a message on my phone that made my heart drop. It was Jake's best friend, who we will call Mike. We're all friendly, so I don't think much of it at first. But when I opened the message, my heart sank further. It was a series of pictures showing Jake with another woman, obviously holding her waist and laughing together at a club. The caption read, "I thought you'd want to see what your fiancé is up to. This is not cool, man." And when I saw this, I was in shock. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from underneath me. I immediately called Mike, and he explained that he didn't want to be a part of Jake's betrayal and thought that I should know as well. He told me that this wasn't a one-time thing and that they had seen Jake get pretty close with this woman throughout the night. The next few hours were a blur, and I went through a wave of emotions, from anger to heartbreak all the way to disbelief. I couldn't understand how someone I thought I knew so well could do this kind of thing to me. I finally decided that I had had enough, and I went to my parents' house to process everything. The next day, I called Jake, and when he finally picked up, he sounded cheerful as if nothing was wrong. I then confronted him directly, and I asked him about the pictures, and when I did, he went silent. Eventually, he tried to brush it off, saying it was just harmless fun and that I was overreacting, and that just fueled my anger even more. So I told him that I couldn't continue the relationship, and when I said that, he panicked, begging me to reconsider, but I stayed firm. I have always believed in healthy boundaries and trust in a relationship, and what he did shattered that completely. I packed my things and I told Jake that it was over. I wish I could say I felt better after that, but honestly, it was heartbreaking. Now that I'm back home, I'm trying to put my life back together. My friends are supportive, but I just can't shake the feeling that I'm making a mistake by leaving him. So am I the jerk for ending our engagement after finding out about him cheating? What should I do? No, I don't blame you in the slightest for doing that, because if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. Like seriously, what he did is a huge betrayal of trust. Like you two are getting married. This guy has no excuse for acting like this. I mean, thank God that Mike actually had your back and was like, hey, I thought you might want to know what's actually going on. Like seriously, Mike is a real one and he saved you from a lot of heartbreak. So no, you are definitely not the jerk in this situation, because what Jake did is absolutely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for asking for my money back from a restaurant that literally overcharged me for a dish that I never even ordered? Here's what happened. So I've just been overcharged in a restaurant and ended up in a really awkward situation. And I'm wondering if my reaction was correct or not, because the way they reacted was so odd to me. My girlfriend and I went to eat at this fairly small restaurant that is close to where we live, and this place opened up 6 months ago, but it doesn't seem like it's doing very well. When we went to pay the bill at the counter, it was 35% more than what I had calculated from the prices on the menu. Several people, I think all family, were stood around, so we didn't have a chance to look the bill over, and I assumed maybe I had made a mistake, so we just paid it and left. Well, as soon as we got outside, I said to my girlfriend, was that bill right? And she said, no, I thought it was wrong as well. So we decided to go back, and my girlfriend said really nicely, hey there, I think you may have made a mistake with our bill. She is super sweet and polite, and the woman was kind of dramatic about it, but got our receipt to look at it. It turns out that they had charged us for one drink that we didn't have, and quite quickly gave my girlfriend the money back for that, but in a weird dramatic way, as if we were making a fuss about nothing, but that only accounted for about 5% of the 35% overcharge. Eventually, they tell us that they didn't have the main dish that we had ordered, so instead they gave us a different version that cost 30% more than the things we actually asked for. And here's the thing, we were not told that they didn't have the dish that we actually ordered prior to being served the food. At no point prior to giving us the bill was it communicated that we were getting a different dish, let alone one that would be way more expensive. The worst part is that rather than apologizing and giving us back the overcharge, they just kept saying, oh, sorry for that, as if that should be the end of the matter and waiting for us to just leave. The guy just kept repeating that they didn't have the dish that we ordered, and I was smiling and saying, okay, but that's not really how this works, until it became very awkward, and I ended up having to say, listen, I don't know why I'm paying extra for something I didn't order, at which point the woman says very dramatically, oh, so you want your money back? To which I said, yes, actually, I really do. They did then give me my money back, but I don't think it should have ever gotten to that point that I needed to ask for it, and now I have to walk past that restaurant every day on my way to work. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You are not the jerk for going back there and demanding your money back, because these people were literally praying that you would not ask for your money back so that they could get away with overcharging you more. Like, that is ridiculous, and there is no good excuse for that. So no, you are definitely not the jerk, because the way these people acted, in my opinion, is incredibly unethical. Am I the jerk for starting my wedding ceremony before my mom could show up, because she's saying it's now my fault that she wasn't on time since I didn't call or text her to see where she was at? And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so the day of the wedding started out as they normally do. I'm the bride and I was inside getting ready, and the final touches were being made outside. After I was almost ready by noon, my mom had to run back to the hotel 20 minutes away to change and come back with my grandma and a family friend. Now, the invitation says that the ceremony is at 2 o'clock, and as per usual, we were a little late starting, but it wasn't anything crazy. Well, the next thing I know, I'm walking down the aisle with no mom, no grandma, or my family friend in sight. The ceremony continues and it's over before we know it. Well, we still hear nothing from them. After about 45 minutes, they finally pull up. I then proceed to go and tell them that it's over and that they missed it and that 2 o'clock means 2 o'clock. Well, my mother immediately becomes hostile and proceeded to blame the bakery for not having buns ready. Then they said they were stopped by a train, and my personal favorite excuse is that apparently it's my fault because I didn't call or text them to see where they were. And I'm just thinking, excuse me? The invitation said 2 o'clock. It's also important to note that the officiant also had another wedding to get to after mine, so it really was a tight schedule. So am I the jerk for not holding up my ceremony? I found out the real reason why they were late, and it all comes down to the fact that she wasn't done getting herself ready, therefore she held up everyone from getting here. But apparently she's mad at me because it's my fault. What should I do? No, this is definitely not your fault, and honestly, it all falls on your mom for not being ready and prioritizing her time. Seriously, anything that she might need is completely null and void in my opinion, especially when you're about to walk down the aisle. Like, she really should have had all that figured out well in advance, and that in my opinion is definitely not your fault. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.